Men and women of Reddit who caught their significant others cheating. How did you do that? And what was your reaction? I knew he had been unfaithful in the past, but I didn't really love him, so it was not that bad. And however, I was bartending one night, and this drunk chick walks up and tells me that I looked familiar. She then proceeds to yell, "Oh, my friend is fucking your husband." So I walked into the beer keg cooler with a bottle of vodka. I downed some shots and went back to work. I held it in that I knew for a few months while I hired an attorney and figured out my next move. I had 3 kids to think of too. So I moved with my kids back home to Texas and got divorced. Now, I'm engaged to my childhood best friend, and we plan to marry in Yosemite next year. He's the complete opposite of my ex. Kind, supportive, and loving. So fuck that Sasquatch-looking cheater. Why did you marry him if you didn't really love him? Plus 3 kids with him. He was hotter than the childhood best friend. Ex-wife actually asked me for her blessing to commit adultery with another married man. She was shocked when I said I don't support it. She went ballistic, has severe mental health issues, went and did it anyway and ended up in a psych ward. 2 marriages ended, and now the 2 cheaters are engaged. Little devastated at first. Blessing in disguise. I mean, open relationships are a thing that exists. Typing this on my phone that does weird spell check stuff. I had my suspicions. He was supposed to go out of town, and he came home early, packed his bag, and ran out the door. Barely saying goodbye to me or our children. We lived on the 5th floor of an apartment building. I looked out the window and saw him get into the car of a woman I could tell because she had a sunroof, and I could see down into the car. The look on the guard's face was priceless. Later, I got a phone call from a woman who was very upset. She said she was his fiancée. She said she worked for the airline and found that he was traveling with another woman. The other woman was the woman in the car. Net later, following my suspicions, I found a receipt in his briefcase. It was in a very expensive store. I went to the store with my 2 children. One was a toddler, at the other still in a stroller. I made up some story about why I needed to know what was purchased. Purchases were quite expensive. I was not allowed to buy clothing for myself. Keep in mind, this is in an Asian country. We were expats there, and this was a very high-end store, so they kept handwritten records in a notebook. They looked up the receipt and said, "Oh yes, Mr. Z, he was here with his wife." She looked up at me, waited a few beats, and then her face just fell, and she said, "I'm so sorry." I said, "It's okay. I just thought he was here with his Singaporean girlfriend." The woman at the airline, I believe, has 2 children with him. The Singaporean women went on to have 2 children with him, and the Thai women had 1 child with him. All are younger than our 2 children. Oh, and then I was walking through a hotel and I caught him having breakfast with the woman he went on the trip with. And then another time I saw them drive past me in his car. I also found a trust document that, by the way, was totally fake, that he wrote for the Singaporean women, putting her in the family trust. Keep in mind, I hadn't lived in the States for 10 years. I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't have bad credit. I had no credit. I had no money. I couldn't go back to my job because technology has significantly changed. I had an 18-month-old and a 3-year-old. As all this was going on, I was planning to somehow leave. Eventually, I packed bags, hid them away, and tried to figure out how to get back to the States. I didn't have access to money or credit card. He had the bright idea one day that I needed to go visit my parents. He bought me a one-way ticket. I figured out he was never going to let me come back. That was fine with me. He married the Singaporean women, cheating on her the whole time. I know for a fact he was engaged to someone else for 4 years while they were married. after scamming that woman out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. He basically dumped her. He moved to a different country, and now he is married again with 2 children, having never divorced the Singaporean woman. Though in actuality, I don't believe they were truly legally married because he married her before we were divorced. By the way, it took me 7 years to divorce him. The most awkward dinner I ever had was when our oldest graduated from graduate school. He came back to the States with the women he was engaged to for 4 years while married to the woman he was married to while still married to me. Are you following this? Anyway, she was a very high government official. Very bright woman. I liked her very much. On the way to the dinner, my daughter explained to her friend who was accompanying us, "So we're going to dinner with my dad who cheated on my mom, with the woman we are trying to keep secret from his girlfriend who we're having dinner with." Yes, those are just as some of the highlights. I forgot. When our youngest was 10 months old, he wanted to do a getaway to men things. We went to Hong Kong. We flew separately because he had a meeting. So he said. He traveled more than 340 days one year, and I finally figured out we flew separately because he was likely doing most of the flight attendants. Anyway, I arrived at the hotel before he did and checked in. The front desk said, "Welcome back, Mrs. Z. I see you. And Mr. Z were here with us last week as well." That was the other Mrs. Z. Oh, and he gave me an ST of when I was pregnant with 2. This is one of the most absurd things I've ever read. Good thing you ditched that guy. Fucking hell. Quite apart from the psychopath behaviors, why on earth would a time want the hassle of having 3 families at once? June 1st, 2018, normal day, a Friday. My husband had kissed me goodbye and gone to work. I was cleaning the house for company who was coming to stay the weekend. The doorbell rang. There was a man at my door who introduced himself as the husband of a woman who my husband worked with. He was there to tell me that my husband and his wife were having an affair. He had busted them about 6 months prior and had told his wife that she had to end the affair. He thinks that she did end it for about 3 months. But then they started up again. When he found out they were at it again, he called my husband because he knew if he confronted him in person, he'd be in a jail cell for what he'd have done. On the phone, he told my husband to leave his wife alone or else he would come and tell me everything that was happening. Apparently, my husband thought that he was bluffing. So I was literally the last to know. My husband never came home again. He got an Airbnb and a lawyer. The divorce was December 21st, 2018. We had been together for 24 years. Still hurts. 4 years? Then to just throw it all away. This is the most heartbreaking one I read. I hope you're doing well, and don't think about the scumbag too much. Out of all the comments, this one really takes the cake. I'm so sorry. So one time I was in the car with my sister, brother, and brother's friend. Give It Up by Pepper started playing through the car speakers from my sister's iPod. There's a part in the song where the singer catches his lady banging his father and says, "Why you gotta sleep with my dad?" Brother's friend gets super upset and starts saying, "What the fuck? That's so messed up. Why would you play that?" Turns out he had caught his now ex-GF and dad sleeping together before, and he thought we played the song intentionally because we somehow knew. Oh, story time. Classic love at first sight. I love you after 2 weeks. Moved in together after 2 months. Engaged after 6. Been together for 4 years and change. Left my rent-controlled bachelor pad and picked a bigger apartment so she could have her art studio. Did everything together and split all bills 50-50. We had different jobs in the same industry and made around the same money. We really loved each other and, as cliche as it sounds, completed each other. I am very analytical and stoic, and she is a liberal artist. She goes to Comic-Con in NYC. She's an expositor. I help her pack. I drop her at the airport. Everything was fine. No signs of anything. She should be back in 4 days. She never came back home. She disappeared. Ghosted. The day she should be home, I freak out that she may be dead, just to find myself blocked on everything. Email, phone, social media, the works. And everything I know is due to the bills she left behind, all unpaid, the credit card we shared. She stopped paying 2 months before, and her cell phone bill, which T-Mobile was nice enough to give me a log because technically it was on my SSN. Phoned one particular NYC area code over and over on the call history and put 2 plus 2 together. She met him on San Diego Comic-Con a few months before and methodically and systematically put together a plan to abandon me, take as much as she could to NYC and never look back. Plot twist. She maxed our credit card and Amazon card furnishing their new home in NYC. By the time grief turned into practicality, it was too late for me to cancel everything. I literally had to log in and see all purchases of houseware made with my money for a house I will never live in. I could not live at our house or afford our lifestyle in one income alone. It was a good 6 months of blackout drunk, Tinder, and overall self-loathe. I'm sure I caused damage to other people in the process. It wasn't even the love part that hurt me the most, but the flat-out betrayal and economic damage. Took me over a year of living paycheck to paycheck to get all balances to zero. She is a Redditor. If you are reading this e-fry, I don't hate you, but you destroyed my self-esteem forever. I cannot ever trust anyone ever again. You ripped my heart from my chest, watched it die slowly, and didn't care for the mess. Eat it. Thanks for the wishes, but please don't hate on her. To this day, all I wanted is to know why she did it. Where did I fail as a partner or as a man? Edit 2. This is the gentleman she left me for. I became close friends with his ex, and she wrote the column linked above, and we shared stories and became good friends. That helped me a lot. Zoe. You rock. Edit 3. Who would know? My biggest heartbreak would blow up. Thanks for the support. Please do not hate on her. I am not suing anyone. It has been ish year by now, and TBH, I would pay to know why she left over trying to get my money back. Total amount was 7-kish give or take, plus having to move out and losing a nice rent control condo. Money come and goes. Lack of closure may last forever. Final edit. It's crazy how much people can change in such a small amount of time. How you can think you know someone in and out, but they can still surprise you in the worst ways. How they can say such nasty, childish things when before you had so much respect for how they held themselves and how they acted. And regardless of how much you prepare yourself, it still hurts. You just have to remind yourself that not everyone has the same heart you do. And regardless of how angry it might make you, nothing is worth sinking to that level. Being the bigger person is always the only positive to come out of something so negative. Be safe out there. Of all the stories I've read on this thread, yours made me the angriest. I sincerely hope that you're doing better and that karma will get that absolute piece of human garbage. My ex-husband and his family smoked a lot of pot, still do. His sister, kids, and nanny were visiting from out of state for a few weeks. When it was time to fly home, they left their stash at my ex Mael's house because they didn't want to take it on the plane. My ex asked if I would pick it up because I was nearby. Stupidly, I agree. I don't smoke, and I was willing to carry it in my car for him. To my surprise, I found a note from the nanny to my ex saying she was in love with him and she was so happy for the time they had together. Obviously, she thought he would get the weed instead of me. While it was incredibly painful at the time, I am definitely living my best life 15 years later. Wow. That is fucked up. It was a day before my 18th birthday. My boyfriend told me he had planned to take me out in his Mazda pickup truck that we named Sparky and get some food from a bigger city down south. Make a whole evening of it. Went to school and had a good day. Nothing was off. Came home and waited. Called and no answer. Waited. I got home from school at 3:30 p.m. and it was nearly 9:30 10 p.m. before I gave up. I got on the computer and found out through a mutual friend from school that he was at this other friend's house. We were friends with her, and her home life wasn't the greatest. Her parents were nasty, disgusting people who treated their children like punching bags. And this mutual friend had been talking of moving out with her little brother in tow. I got in my mom's car, drove over there, and found them having sex on the living room couch. I went home. Told my mom he wasn't allowed in the house. I wasn't accepting his calls, and I was going to bed. I told her what happened, and that I just wanted to deal with it in the morning. These days, I went to bed early and woke up early. Next morning, he came over like nothing had happened and greeted me. He tried to hug me, and I backed away. He asked me what was wrong, and I told him that he had missed my birthday night out because he wanted to get his ding-dong wet in so-and-so's woman parts. He accused me of stalking him, cheating on him, being a controlling B-word, tried to do what is now called gaslighting. I told him I was done. He made his bed with her, and now he gets to lay in it. That because he liked her better, obviously they needed to be together. Oh, I told our mutual friends that we had broken up due to some disagreements. Mutual friend HR was inside, decided to spread it around school that she was a better lay than I was. So, yeah, damn, that fucking sucks. Fuck you to your ex, and fuck you to whatever asshole friend decided to spread that around. I was working 2 jobs for 18 to 28 shars a day, nearly 7 days a week. She started to seem very distant, despite the fact that she would never put in any effort to work or be helpful to the marriage. She started becoming glued to her phone. I checked our phone records, and sure enough, there was one number that stood out. When I asked to see her phone, she gave it to me, thinking I was going to FB. When I went to open the Messages app, she grabbed the phone and ran. I had a backup phone, and since our phones use SIM cards, I went to AT&T and got a new one for her line. Well, all her accounts were linked to that number. So after digging around, I found Tinder, POF, nude Snapchats, hidden messages on FB. You name the dating app, she had a profile. It turned out that she had been lying about me for years to all her friends and family, saying all kinds of negative things. I just felt utterly betrayed. We actually reconciled, but I didn't trust her to say the least. So I installed a keystroke logger on her phone, and months later, she was back at it. I miss my kids so much, but I'm financially, emotionally, and physically better. I got sober and clean and have gotten my depression in control. And it was honestly the best thing that ever happened. Well done, she's a asshole. I'm sorry you missed your kids. That must be super hard. So she's the one that fucked up more than once, and she still got the kids. Oh, that shit ain't fair at all. Not me, but my cousin caught his fiancée cheating. He was away every few weeks for work while she stayed at home, doing nothing, and refused to find a job. One day, he decides to come home early from the work trip to surprise her for their anniversary. He came home and found her fucking some guy in the shower. They didn't hear him come into the house or the bathroom. The first thing he did, he took out his phone, took a photo of them having sex, and sent it to her mother. A class move, if you ask me. He then dumped her and moved on. God, why punish the mother like that? This isn't my story, but my parents. My mom had a boyfriend when my parents met, and she broke up with him to be with my dad. Fast forward 10 years or so, my parents are married with 2 kids, my older brother and me. Anyway, she travels for work semi-often, and she started taking trips to see her friend in Chicago. I was young enough that I don't really remember when it started, but I noticed that my dad was really irritable on these weekends. I think I was about 12 when I realized what was going on. I figured it out before my brother did. I used to sit at the top of the stairs and listen to my parents argue. I don't even remember if I heard something that gave it away, if it slowly dawned on me as I grew up, or if one day it just hit me. It's always just been a part of my life that my mom lies. Still is. My dad used to beg me to not say anything to her that I knew because A, he was desperate to keep the family together, and 2, my mom would get on his case for getting the kids involved. No joke. One day, during the summer after I graduated high school, I came home from work to find my mom in the garage loading up her car. I asked her why she was putting blankets in her car, and she got quiet for a moment and said, "Well, I'm moving out." I just went inside. Later, she texted my dad that she had moved to her brother's house. That's how we found out. They were married for 20 years, and she sent him a fucking text message. I don't know if she was planning on telling me at all if I hadn't happened to come home when I did, or if she would have just disappeared. There have been times when she left without telling me she was going somewhere. I'd realized that I hadn't seen my mother in a few days and ask my dad where she was, and he'd be like, "Oh, she didn't tell you? She's in Montreal for a week," or something like that. So anything possible. I'm sorry, man. Same thing happened to my folks, too. I just think that baby boomers really were not raised right. They can't accept any accountability. Boyfriend asked me to look for something on his computer. I couldn't find it at first. While waiting for clearer instructions, I see a message in the corner talking about how she misses him or whatever. I was curious what she was talking about when she sends a picture. Weird. Well, I clicked on it. Through Facebook, he's been talking to 100 plus women. All of them are either sending him pictures of their bodies or thanking him for the money. I'm sorry, the what now? Digging further into it, there's a link. It's to some money-sending site similar to PayPal. I clicked to see the history. It shows 4 total pages, 20 items per page. We've been together for 15 years. We have a child. I'm on disability. He doesn't work. He sent over $500 USD in exchange for nude pictures. That's over half my monthly paycheck. I'm furious. I've literally told him, watch porn, talk to other women. I don't care. He's lied, saying he's never talked to anyone before while he's lying the entire time. The best part is, we broke up, I got cancer. He moved back in, all while doing this, for over 7 years. Dude, you deserve so much better. I'm so sorry. She'd been acting off my entire visit, so when she took a shower, I looked at her phone. There was a lot more leading up to that moment, but that's the Cliff's Notes version. I was in absolute shock at what I saw. I texted my sister and a friend of mine that lived 3 time zones away. I showed them what I saw. They both suggested I leave immediately. So I started packing. Before I knew it, she was standing there asking me what I was doing. I was in my boxers and a t-shirt with socks on and 1 shoe. I was in such a daze I had no idea how long I had stood there. I told her we needed to talk. So we did. I just asked her what the hell was going on with our relationship and why she was being so aloof. She shrugged it off and said it was me. I was running around in my own head, finding things to worry about. Then she promised me everything was okay. I decided to believe her despite what I saw on her phone. Until I got a TXT from that friend in the early morning asking if I was okay. I gave her an update. She encouraged me to leave and said I was being lied to. I finished packing while she slept, loaded everything into my car, not looking forward to the 5-hour drive home. I decided to tell her before I left. I saw what was in your phone with your ex. I snooped. I'm not proud, but I can't be here anymore. She didn't say anything. She gave me a hug. I still remember how warm she felt in my arms, and I left. This is so sad, but you absolutely did the right thing, even though it was hard. My girlfriend went to visit her parents and friend, and when she came back, I just knew. I sat her down and apologized and told her I cheated while she was away. She immediately nuked me with, well, guess what? I did too. When I told her that I actually hadn't slept with anyone and she'd just been faked out, she was displeased. Lamau, sorry man, but this was funny. Was dating a girl during college. Took her on a vacation to the beach where I had planned on proposing to her as we had been together 4+ years. While she was in the shower, checked her phone looking for something. Saw several pictures of her making out with someone from her college. Had apparently been happening for several months. Was an awkward drive home for sure. Dropped her off at the airport the day after ending things. She ended up becoming an anti-vax and essential oils believer, so dodged a bullet there. Glad you dumped that, Karen. I couldn't find my then wife after she got off work one evening. I tried to call her cell phone with no answer. She didn't show up to the house until 9:30 p.m. She weaved some tale about getting stuck in traffic. I did some sleuthing and pulled the State Farm Good Driving app up, which tracks your movements. I found out she had been leaving work early, going to the nearby rest area off of the expressway, and having sex with a 20-something trucker she met at her previous job. I decided to interrupt the festivities one afternoon. I showed up to the rest area, parked in front of his rig, and jumped right up to the door. The cabin shade was drawn. I withdrew the shades and saw my loving ex-wife with a meth pipe in her hand and was going to town on this guy. He had the gall to tell me to give them privacy. I didn't handle it very well. I called the cops. They both were arrested for possession, and I promptly filed for divorce. The icing on the cake is that a few months after I left, she cheated on her new trucker friend and is well on her way to her 7th friend. Godspeed, you wet, musty nightmare. Wet, musty nightmare. Keeping that one in the old memory bank.
Be sure to subscribe and check out the next story here.